Mr. Beat presents Presidential Elections in American History. The 23rd presidential election in American history took place on November 7th, 1876. Boy, was this one controversial. Let's get right to it. President Ulysses Grant actually considered running for a third term, and he would have been the first to try, but he ultimately decided against it. This is probably a good idea since his administration continued to be accused of corruption and faced many scandals. Plus, the economy sucked. The country was in the middle of the Great Depression. Well, that's what they called it back then. After the real Great Depression happened in the 1930s, we now call this financial crisis the Panic of 1873. So Grant was smart to decide against seeking a third term, but who would take his place? When the Republican National Convention assembled, several candidates were on the ballot. James Blaine looked to be the early favorite, but many Republicans argued Blaine couldn't win the general election. Eventually, they settled with Rutherford Hayes, the governor of Ohio. Rutherford was another Civil War hero, having fought with bravery and even getting wounded 5 times during the war. He was known as a reformer. Plus, his beard was amazing. The Republicans chose William Wheeler, a representative from New York, as his running mate. The Democrats were feeling much better about their chances now that the economy was in ruins and Grant's friends had messed up the Republican image. They were fired up and passionately supported Samuel Tilden, the governor of New York. Tilden was known as a new type of Democrat, a bourbon Democrat. Bourbon Democrats were basically classical liberals who supported things like free trade and the gold standard, and opposed things like imperialism. The Democrats nominated Thomas Hendricks, the governor of Indiana, as Tilden's running mate. So this election looked like a battle of governors. But wait, there's more! A new political party called the Greenback Party had emerged to offer a third option. They wanted inflation through printing paper money called greenbacks and were quite anti-monopoly, bringing these two issues into the national spotlight. They nominated inventor and entrepreneur Peter Cooper for president. Cooper was an interesting fellow. I mean, look at that beard. I love it. Plus, he designed and built the first American steam locomotive, and he was definitely not a politician, and he was like 180 years old. Okay, he was actually just 85. Cooper was the oldest person ever nominated for president in American history. Okay, enough about him. His running mate was Samuel Fenton Cary, the former representative from Ohio. As most third parties go, they stood little chance. Meanwhile, it was shaping up to be a very close race between Hayes and Tilden. The two actually didn't campaign much and left that to their supporters. This election would mark the first one in which the new state of Colorado could participate in. However, since it became a state in August, its state legislature, who happened to be Republican, chose the electors. In fact, this was the last election in which any state picked its electors this way. Keep this in mind when we look at the results here in a bit. And here are the results. Oh boy, we have a mess here. At first, it appeared as if Tilden was going to win. By midnight, he had 184 of the 185 electoral votes, and he led the popular vote by 250,000. Republicans called foul play, though, saying that in southern states, Democrats were using intimidation and bribery to get African Americans not to vote. Democrats also accused Republicans of not counting Tilden votes. But 20 electoral votes were disputed in 4 states: Florida, Louisiana, Oregon, and South Carolina. Congress created an electoral commission to investigate and resolve the dispute. The commission had 5 U.S. representatives, 5 senators, and 5 Supreme Court justices. 5 of the members of Congress were Democrat and 5 Republican. Of the 5 justices, 2 were Democrat and 2 Republican. And David Davis, the 5th justice, I mentioned him in the last episode actually, he was an independent. However, Democrats in the Illinois legislature elected Davis to the U.S. Senate in hopes that Davis would support Tilden. That plan backfired as David excused himself from the commission. Davis was replaced by Justice Joseph Bradley, hardly a political fellow, but still someone more aligned with the Republicans. And he would vote with them. Bradley's vote broke the tie along party lines, and in an 8-7 ruling, decided to award the disputed electoral votes to Hayes. This made so many people angry that some even talked about a second civil war. To make the Democrats happy, the Republicans agreed to withdraw all remaining federal troops from the South, which officially ended Reconstruction. In other words, the North would no longer micromanage the South, and after this, the South would attempt to go back to their pre-Civil War ways, especially with its discrimination against blacks. This informal agreement became famously known as the Compromise of 1877. So, with 185 electoral votes, Rutherford Hayes won, becoming the 19th president in American history. William Wheeler became the 19th vice president in American history. Samuel J. Tilden finished with 184 electoral votes. Rutherford's victory was the smallest electoral vote victory in American history. To add insult to injury, Tilden won the popular vote by more than 250,000 votes. This is the only election in which a candidate for president received more than 50% of the popular vote, but still didn't get elected. Tilden said, quote, "I can retire to public life with the consciousness that I shall receive from posterity the credit of having been elected to the highest position in the gift of the people, without any of the cares and responsibilities of the office," unquote. Understandably, people began to question the Electoral College after this election. Don't forget Peter Cooper had a solid showing for third place, finishing with about 1% of the popular vote. This election was certainly unique. It was the first presidential election in 24 years in which a Democratic candidate won a majority of the popular vote. It was one of 4 elections in which the dude who won the plurality, or most votes, did not win the election. It had the highest voter turnout in American history. It was the last one to occur prior to the end of Reconstruction, and it'd be another 20 years before a southern state would again vote for a Republican presidential hopeful. I'll see you for the next election, buddy.